Japan is facing the disastrous impact of climate change. Shingetsu News spoke with representatives from the World Wildlife Fund and the Asian Institute of Management about the threat of global warming.
We are now having more hot days, within 1 year, and we also have increasing, heat strokes in ordinary people's lives.
This summer, over 30,000 people went to the hospital for heat stroke, in the month of August alone.
During the last couple of months, we actually, some cities in Japan, recorded the highest temperature ever.
Several cities in Japan hit temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, such as Kumagaya, Saitama, which hit 41.1 degrees. The Japanese Meteorological Agency set the definition of an extremely hot day as 35 degrees, which now needs to be raised. This definition was set within the last 10 years, which highlights the rapid speed with which the climate is warming.
Global warming is essentially warming up the atmosphere, right? And if you have the higher temperature atmosphere, it absorbs more, water from the ocean. That actually means that the more power it gets in the, especially in case of the typhoon. We increasingly having heavy rains in these days, and so mainly Japanese people are feeling the impact of climate change through these kinds of weather events and extreme weather events.
What aggravates these hydrometeorological and climatic events is the geography and topography of Japan. So in the face of pretty much unfettered storm, the storm surges in Japan would be quite phenomenal. Being a relatively small place in terms of the population being high, the density of population also plays a role in making that same exposure. If it were all rural and low density, that would be one thing. But when you are intensely populated with built-up urban centers, that exposure, the very same exposure, is that much bigger. So for those reasons, the exposure for Japan would be on the high side on a scale.
Japan is home to over 120 million people in a 400,000 square kilometer country. That's 1/3 of the US population in an area smaller than California. A typhoon hitting a relatively small area in Japan can affect a massive number of people, especially in urban centers. Increasingly powerful typhoons are bringing flooding to unexpected areas.
One of the things about this year's floods is that it hit the places where least expected. That's why we had more than 200 people deaths died, because of that floods.
Flooding in Japan in 2018 resulted in 225 deaths and cost approximately 1 trillion yen, or nearly $10 billion in property damage. Climate change also represents challenges to agriculture and food production.
Right now, it is not as devastating as we have to fear, in a sense that we have to fear the amount of the food we can produce. But the quality of the food, the quality of the rice is definitely getting hit.
Two primary staples of the Japanese diet are fish and rice. Traditionally, the best rice is grown in the northwest of Japan, such as in Niigata Prefecture. Now, rising temperatures are pushing the optimal range for rice production north to Hokkaido, which is bad for the northwest and not necessarily good for Hokkaido.
Fruits and vegetables, those would be particularly hit hard by extremely hot conditions. Hokkaido is like a breadbasket. It's like a storehouse of agriculture. So strawberries, cherries, that kind of oranges. These are ones that would be clearly affected by excess heat.
While rice production may flourish, the existing produce industry will suffer. Japan's fishing industry, another major part of the country's food economy, is also being affected by climate change.
In the fishery industries is another industry which has been experiencing a huge effect, huge impact from the climate change because of the rising temperature of the ocean. It apparently some of the species behavior has changed. So it is fishermen cannot expect their 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 score in the same timing the same year. So it's a very devastating for them to continue their fisheries industry. And that affects, of course, the prices of the fish and of course they affect the whole households too. So that's something feared among the fishermen and the fishery industry.
Japan is starting to feel the worst of the physical and economic damage caused by climate change. But the Abe government is not taking the threat seriously.
The Japanese government is not doing really great. So I really hope that the Japanese government is rising up to this challenge and have the guts to say that we as the Japanese people will not tolerate this problem, and we're gonna work on this problem seriously. And so we're gonna revise our current climate target, which is not really enough to achieve the Paris Agreement. We're gonna do that, and next year Japan is going to host G20 in front of the international society. I really wanted the Japanese government to say that out loud to the international society.
While it is important for Japan to take on this issue globally, people should think about how it affects them locally.
Thinking of it as global is a reason why actions are usually not taken. But when you think of it as local, which it is already, and now as opposed to 50 years from now, that changes the pressure to act. And changing mindsets is the bottom line. I mean, even if a political action has to follow and economic policies have to be done, they all spring from mindsets. And so when people think of it as local and now, that makes a huge difference.
Thinking locally will make people more passionate about climate issues, and it will motivate them to vote for politicians who also care about protecting the environment.
There are lots of politicians are trying to do the right thing about climate change, but they don't get selected because of the climate change. If they don't get selected by that, they stop doing that. So you really have to make a choice. When it's not easy, and it's not always the most important thing for for voters, but sometimes once in a while you really have to care about the company you choose, the politician you choose, whether those people are the ones who really want to protect the climate or not.